In this video, I'm going to show you the exact method to make your tank go from hazy to crystal clear in just under 24 hours. I'm going to show you the exact media order, the flow that actually creates better flow in your filter, and the polishing pad trick to make sure you do not crash your cycle. So make sure you pause, you copy the checklist on the screen that's going to come up, and let's get right into this. Let's go through and break down the different type of hazes or clouds that can happen in your aquarium first. Let's find them out, then we'll go through and solve them. The first one is going to be hazy, milky kind of cloud in your aquarium. That typically happens when you have a brand new aquarium and it's been a couple of weeks and that haze starts to show up. That means it's a new tank and it's a bacterial bloom. Next one is going to be a green haze to your water. That typically means that there's a ton of free floating algae in that aquarium. Next one is going to be yellow or tea type of color in your water, and that's typically from tannins, leaching from wood, or maybe you added botanicals. It is more tannin related. Then there's a fine dust. This typically happens right when you set up an aquarium. It happens to me, and that is typically particles from your hardscape or your substrate. Let's talk about the 24-hour method. This is going to work for most of your dust and fine particles. First and foremost, you want to make sure you have perfect flow in your aquarium, creating a circular path to your outtake. So from intake to outtake through the entire aquarium itself. Also, it's hyper important to make sure you have surface agitation. So you want to make sure you have surface ripple. That can be from aeration that's going up and creating surface ripple, or maybe your intake is creating a surface ripple. You want to make sure you have gentle surface ripple as well. I'm not talking about like a running water system after like a flood. But with that, that is the flow path. Now, second, we're going to be talking about is your filter. How do you set up your filter? What is the correct method for media outtake or just media order? So first and foremost, this is a Fluvial 207. I cleaned this just for you all in this video. But basically you have your intake, so the water is going to come in here. And what's going to be hitting first is your coarse media pad. So this media pad is going to pick up most of the bigger particles, and then it has a secondary media pad that's pulling through for the secondary big particles as well. Then you have your cartridges that has most of your other additional fine matter and biomedia. So the first one of this stack, we're going to take this off. This is going to be your medium coarse sponge. This is going to pick up the rest of the water from the coarse sponges and then to your medium coarse sponge, so it's a little bit more dense than the other ones. This is going to be your next stage. I do add media to this. I just haven't added it in here yet because I wanted to show you the sponge and that part of it. So there'll be media on top as well. And then that brings you to the second one, which is your biomedia. Make sure you never wash this with tap water or scrub them. You can rinse them or like shake them, rinse them with your water from your aquarium. So that'll be your secondary one, even though I still have some in the other one. So again, pulling up sponge, some media here, and then more media, your biomedia. And then your last one is going to be your polishing or your clear water area. So basically what I have is my polishing pads. These are hyper important for picking up the most finest matter. Then the second one I always use this, even though I don't measure my phosphates, I just make sure I have this, especially since I have a bunch of plants in my aquarium. I add a phosphate pad as well. So that will be there on top. And the next last part is your Purigen or carbon, whatever you use. I use Purigen in all of my tanks, regardless of tannins. It just makes the water super crystal clear. So I use Purigen in all of my aquariums, and that's the last part. That's going to be the rest of the water. That's after all the water is clear, it'll be running through the Purigen and re-entering the aquarium. So that is your media order. Now we're going to break down each individual one. So for your polishing pads, you want to add these in specifically for clearing up that water in that aquarium. So within the first 12 to 24 hours of that run, if your water starts to clear, you can pull them out and add more media right into those areas as well. maybe have just one polishing pad. What you're trying not to sacrifice is flow into that aquarium. So you want to make sure that aquarium has optimal flow, and you can remove these if you're not having optimal flow. You don't want to prevent optimal flow. You don't want to have a reduction of flow to sacrifice for the polishing pad. So just make sure you're aware of that. In addition to that, you want to make sure you're not washing any of your sponges with tap water. You're using aquarium water that you've pulled out and you're rinsing them in there. Do not wash with tap water. Now, if you have green water, you want to make sure you're adding a UV light for right around 48 to 72 hours in your aquarium. Typically, you can get it for filter intake or in your filter line. So make sure you get a UV light. Then you want to make sure you're doing a 50% water change, and you have your filter polishing pads for about 12 hours. So those polishing pads, so that it's pulling all of that fine dead algae matter out, and then you're removing those out of that filter as well once that's taken care of. You also want to make sure your light is reduced by 30 to 60 minutes. Now, if it looks like tea, it is tannins. And if you want that, great. But if you're listening because you don't want that, you want to make sure you add Purigen into your filter, and it will pull all of those tannins out and contain them in that Purigen. Now, next time, you want to make sure you pre-soak any of your wood or botanicals prior to adding them into your aquarium to get rid of the tannins out of them. You can then supplement with Purigen as well, just to make sure it's pulling out all of those tannins if there's small leaching tannins from that organic matter. Now, if it's dust, that typically is happening because you didn't pre-rinse your hardscape or your substrate. Some substrates do need to be pre-rinsed, so you have all of this dust in your aquarium. So I just recommend you doing that. But first, how do you get rid of it if it is in your aquarium? You want to make sure you're adding polishing pads. That's going to pull all of that fine matter out. I also recommend, if that doesn't clear it up right away when you first start, using Aqua Clear. It is one of the best game changers I've used for starting up brand new aquariums, for pulling out all of those fine particles and binding them together, so then it gets collected in that polishing pad. So for maintenance of all of this, you want to make sure every bi-weekly, when you're first starting up your aquarium, you're going to go through and wash those pads with tank water. Then you can move that to a monthly cycle. Right now, I'm at about a 3-month cycle for all of my aquariums. My flow's fine, the tanks are doing great. So just be aware you can get further away from a bi-weekly basis the longer your aquarium's been running. When you go through and do your monthly or bi-monthly cleaning, you also want to make sure you're rinsing your biomedia. And that doesn't mean you're scrubbing it, you're just shaking it in your aquarium water so that it's removing some of the matter off of those as well, because you don't want to kill your beneficial bacteria. So let's go through our checklist. You're going to identify from what I just listed what cloud issue you're having. Then you're going to make sure you have optimal flow and ripple. Then you're going to go through and add your polishing pad, or you're going to go through and add your Purigen. And then you're going to remove them when it's no longer necessary, or you're like me, I just always have my Purigen and always have polishing pads in my tank because my flow is optimal no matter what. But again, make sure you go through and follow that checklist. Make sure you comment below your tank size, what filter you're using, and what cloud you have. I'll reply with a custom outline specifically detailing how to fix your cloud in your aquarium. And if one of your friends is having them, share this video with them. I'll comment and reply to them just as easily as well. And take this moment to set your notifications, like and subscribe. It truly helps out the channel. And if you haven't yet, check out my recent video right here if you're in the game of CO2 as well. But until next time, I'll see you all on the next tip video.